Hi, everyone, and good evening. My name is Sara Duffey, and I work in clinical trial education for the Lurie Cancer Center. Clinical trials are important because they advance the standard of care in cancer treatments. Patients are living longer with cancer, and clinical trials often provide additional treatment options for patients. So I'm going to go over the basics of clinical trials, what clinical trials are, as well as what's involved in participating in a clinical trial. Clinical trials are research studies with human volunteers that answer a research question. In oncology, clinical trials usually are testing a drug or a combination of drugs to see if they are safe and as well as effective. Clinical trials are conducted in a series of phases, each answering a separate research question. The goal of a clinical trial is usually to gain regulatory approval so the drug can be commercially available to all patients who need it. The majority of clinical trials are sponsored by pharmaceutical companies. Academic medical centers also conduct clinical trials referred to as investigator-initiated trials. Investigator-initiated trials often test a drug that is already FDA approved for one type of cancer to see if it has activity in another type of cancer. And the National Cancer Institute has a clinical trial network that includes researchers from across the United States who collaborate to develop clinical trials and enroll patients nationwide. Most of the clinical trials we conduct are for the treatment of cancer at various stages. But there are also clinical trials for the prevention of relapse or the treatment or prevention of side effects, which can occur due to certain chemotherapies. These types of clinical trials are classified as interventional clinical trials. Non-interventional clinical trials are observational and can include blood and tissue banking for future research, as well as quality of life and health outcomes. It takes a minimum of 10 years to gain FDA approval of a drug from initiation in a lab to completion of clinical trials. The preclinical portion includes the laboratory research where the drug is developed and studied, as well as the animal testing. If the preclinical research has promising results, they move to clinical trials in humans using human volunteers in the clinical setting. Phase 1 trials are designed to determine the maximum tolerated dose of a study drug. Patients in groups of 3 are assigned a specific dose of study drug, and they're watched carefully for side effects. Provided those 3 patients don't experience any unanticipated or excessive side effects, an additional 3 patients are added at a higher dose. This is repeated until the maximum tolerated dose is achieved. Typically, phase 1 trials require no more than 15 to 20 patients. And phase 2 trials study test the drug to make sure that it not only is safe, but it's also effective. So the maximum tolerated dose that was achieved in phase 1 is applied to the phase 2 trials to determine if the study drug is effective, and if so, how effective is it? And phase 3 trials compare the investigational drug with standard of care treatment to see if the study drug is substantially better than what is currently available or currently approved by the FDA for that specific type of cancer. Phase 3 trials are usually randomized. Patients are assigned to study treatment on a random basis. One of the interventions will include the study treatment along with standard of care therapy, while another intervention will include the standard of care therapy alone. In any case, patients who participate on phase 3 clinical trials are guaranteed at least the standard of care for their cancer. And phase 4 trials are conducted after FDA approval of a drug to gain more information on side effects with long-term use of the drug. There are many misconceptions about participating in clinical trials. The misconception I hear most is that patients are concerned they will receive a placebo instead of active treatment. The fact is that placebos are rarely used in cancer clinical trials, but exceptions include when there is no standard of care treatment available for a specific cancer, when the standard of care is observation, or in combination with standard of care therapies. Another misconception is that clinical trials are free. Routine procedures include any tests, CT scans, or labs that patients would undergo, whether the patient was participating in a clinical trial or receiving standard of care therapy. Routine costs associated with these procedures are the responsibility of the patient insurer. The Affordable Care Act requires most insurance companies to cover any routine costs associated with patients participating in clinical trials. Any tests that are above and beyond what's considered standard of care are considered research-related and therefore are the responsibility of the clinical trial sponsor. And another is that clinical trials are offered only when there is no hope, but the fact is that there are clinical trials often available for all stages of cancer, including newly diagnosed and untreated cancers. So to enter a clinical trial, every clinical trial has basic eligibility that can include the specific diagnosis, the stage of the cancer, the age of the patient, or perhaps the number of prior chemotherapies the patient's received. If the patient meets basic eligibility, the patient then undergoes further testing to make sure that the patient is healthy enough to receive the study drug. Some advantages to participating in clinical trials: early access to advanced treatments before they are widely available, and the investigational drug is provided at no cost to the patient. I know a lot of patients find it very gratifying to participate in clinical trials because they are participating in the advancement of medicine. Some things to think about, though: if you do participate in a clinical trial, in a randomized clinical trial, you will not be able to choose the therapy that you receive. So there is a chance that you may not receive the study treatment. And then the study protocol may require more time and attention than would a non-protocol treatment. Some resources to locate clinical trials. ClinicalTrials.gov is a worldwide database of clinical trials. Any clinical trial that is conducted in the United States is required to register with ClinicalTrials.gov. This website allows you to filter based on the disease, the stage of the disease, or location of where you wish to participate. And then cancer.net is actually a really good resource to learn about different types of cancers and to stay apprised of the latest treatment advances. The Lurie Cancer Center has over 300 cancer clinical trials at any given time, including phase 1, 2, and 3 supportive care, survivorship trials, and developmental therapeutics. And lastly, all of you have a save the date slip. We have Cancer Connections coming up on Saturday, November 12th, which is a half-day patient education event that we hold 3 times a year. So please consider attending that because a lot of patients find this very useful. Questions or comments, you can email me or give me a call. Thank you.